In today's video, we're diving into the mystery of the gold at Fort Knox. Is it really there? Treasury Secretary Scott Bent claims there's an official report confirming the gold is safe and sound. He also says the gold is audited every year. But here's the problem. That statement is completely false. And you know how I found out? I actually took the time to read that report myself. And let me tell you, it's complete nonsense. I'm going to show you exactly why. So, the United States Bullion Depository, more famously known as Fort Knox, is located in the great state of Kentucky. Fort Knox is a heavily guarded vault located right beside the U.S. Army post, also named Fort Knox. So the U.S. Treasury started shipping gold here in 1937 and 1941. Now, according to the United States Mint, a government agency under the Department of the Treasury, the U.S. government holds around 274 million troy ounces of gold, with about 147 million troy ounces, or 54% of it, stored at Fort Knox. So, there's been a persistent rumor for years that the gold at Fort Knox is either missing or not all there. And as the saying goes, where there's smoke, there's often fire. So why do these rumors keep circulating? One big reason is that the gold at Fort Knox hasn't been fully audited in decades. You might have heard some of the more popular theories. One is that the U.S. secretly sold off some of the gold to foreign entities in a quiet effort to raise funds. Another rumor claims that the U.S. doesn't actually hold legal ownership of the gold anymore, that while the gold might still be physically stored at Fort Knox, it technically belongs to other parties. And then there's the infamous theory that the gold isn't real at all, that the bars are actually tungsten, just coated in gold, which would explain why officials won't allow a proper, independent audit. Now, I want to show you this video clip of President Trump from February, where he says he wants to visit Fort Knox himself to verify that the gold is actually there, and that it's real gold. So go ahead and take a look.
But one of the things we do want to look, we hope everything's fine with Fort Knox, but we're going to go to Fort Knox, the fabled Fort Knox, to make sure the gold is there.
And Elon Musk is echoing the same sentiment, saying we should go to Fort Knox and see if the gold is really there. So please take a look.
I think it would be I think it would be awesome to live stream Fort Knox. And after all, it is actually the gold of the American people. So the American people should, it seems to me, have a right to see their gold.
All right. You've got to see this clip. It's Treasury Secretary Scott Bent claiming that the gold at Fort Knox is indeed there. He even says it's audited every year, which is completely false. But please take a look at what he says.
I can tell you that we do an audit every year. I can tell the American people on camera right now that there was a report September 30th, 2024. All the gold is there.
All right, so you just saw it for yourself. Treasury Secretary Scott Bent claiming that the gold at Fort Knox is audited every year, and he pointed to the report dated September 30th, 2024 as the most recent one. But here's the thing. That's confusing, because for years people have been saying there hasn't been a proper audit in decades. And now he's out here saying it happens annually? So what's really going on? Well, I went ahead and dug up the report from September 30th, 2024. And here it is. Let me show you exactly what it says. These are the audit reports for the gold reserves as of September 30th, 2024. The very report that Secretary Bent claims proves the gold is still safely stored at Fort Knox. Now, I want you to understand that what Bent said was a complete lie. They did not actually audit the gold at Fort Knox, and that's exactly why President Trump is now saying he wants to go there himself and do a proper audit. So here it is, the so-called audit report. It's just 20 pages long. Here's the table of contents, and now let's dive into the core of it and see exactly what the auditors claimed to have found. All right, here's what the report actually says. And I'm going to highlight the key findings from their so-called audit. It states that the Department of the Treasury's schedules of gold reserves as of September 30th, 2024 are fairly presented. In other words, they're just saying the numbers look fine on paper. So just to sum it up, in the auditor's opinion, the gold reserve schedules are fairly presented. But do you see what's really going on here? They didn't audit the actual gold at Fort Knox. All they did was audit the schedules, which are just paperwork showing where the gold is supposed to be. And that's basically what you'll find right here on page 8 of the report. Let me zoom in so you can get a clearer look at it. So, here it is. Take a look at the schedules for the United States gold reserves. Yeah, so take a look for yourself, look. See the intense effort that went into auditing these schedules. This is the so-called audit that Treasury Secretary Scott Bent is talking about.
Is there actually still gold in Fort Knox?
We do an audit every year, so the audit that ended the year September 30th, 2024, all the gold is present and accounted for.
All right, so think about this. Why is Treasury Secretary Scott Bent trying to convince people that a real audit was done to verify the gold at Fort Knox? I'm asking you because honestly, I don't know. You tell me. Now, I want to point something out. Conducting a real audit of the gold at Fort Knox would actually be a massive undertaking. And here's an estimate from JM Bullion that gives you an idea of just how big of a deal it would be. They estimate that a full audit of the gold at Fort Knox would take about 18 months. That's because there are 368,250 gold bars stored there, each weighing 27.12 pounds. The gold is kept in 13 small compartments, each measuring just 6 feet wide, 12 feet deep, and 8 feet tall. That's actually pretty tight. Not enough room to bring in heavy equipment, forklifts, or even a large team to help. And it was purposely designed like this to enhance security. So, you'd be working with a small audit team of just 20 people to verify all 368,250 gold bars, which breaks down to about 18,412 bars per person. And keep in mind, they'd have to count, weigh, and inspect every single bar. Plus, it's likely they'll find discrepancies along the way, which would add even more time to the process. Okay, so going back to this audit of 2024, they didn't do this. They didn't do any of this. They didn't audit the gold. No, they just created a report based on other reports. Here's page 10 of the report, the notes to the schedules. Look at what they did. They simply updated the market value from 2023 to 2024. Wow, what a thorough audit. Now, I want to share a timeline of the last real audits of the gold at Fort Knox. The most recent one was back in 1953. During that audit, 88,000 gold bars were inspected, 9,000 bars were weighed, and 26 bars were randomly selected and drilled to test their purity. So here's the report from 1953, and here it states what I just said. 88,000 gold bars were counted, 9,000 weighed, and 26 bars assayed. The audit concluded with the statement, "We, the undersigned, found the assets verified to be in full agreement." In other words, everything checked out perfectly. And then, another audit took place in 1974, during which 91,164 gold bars were inspected and sampled for both weight and purity. So that was in this report, the 1974 report, which is provided on February of 1975. The conclusion was that the gold stored at the Fort Knox depository matched the records of the depository. And from 1975 to 1984, a continuous audit program was conducted annually, systematically verifying the gold reserves over time. By 1984, 97% of the gold bars had been audited. However, for the past 40 years since then, no audits of the gold have taken place. So, sure, there were some photo opportunities, like in 2017 when former Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin visited Fort Knox, and Senator Mitch McConnell also visited to confirm the gold's presence at Fort Knox. However, neither Mnuchin nor McConnell conducted an actual inspection or audit. It was merely a highly publicized guided tour. Just look at how happy McConnell looks here, clearly enjoying himself rather than performing an audit. Anyway, let me know what you think. Do you believe the gold is really there or not? Please subscribe, and I'll keep you updated on any developments in this situation. Thank you very much, and have a great day.